There were bad nights, and then there were catastrophically bad nights. For Elliot Graves, tonight was shaping up to be the latter. The Black Hole Dive, his rundown excuse for a bar, was particularly crowded. A mix of grizzled asteroid miners, shady bounty hunters, and a few off-duty security droids were hunched over their drinks, grumbling about the price of fuel and the increasing number of space station health inspections. Business was steady, which was the one good thing about operating a bar on Titan VI, a forgotten moon colony orbiting Jupiter. Elliot wiped down the counter, glancing up at the neon sign flickering above the bar. Black Hole Dive, where your sorrows get sucked in. The S in sucked was still busted, which was leading to some unfortunate interpretations. "Hey, Elliot!" A three-eyed Graxorian smuggler slammed a tentacled hand down on the counter, waving an empty glass. "Another round!" Yeah. Hold your tentacles," Elliot muttered, pouring a cosmic fizz from the old dispenser. The drink was supposed to have a subtle burst of neutron berry essence, but with the way his equipment was holding up, it tasted more like expired cough syrup mixed with disappointment. Just another night. Just another paycheck to keep the health inspectors and debt collectors at bay. And then, everything went horribly, irreversibly wrong. The front doors exploded. Not in a metaphorical, "Oh no, things are getting out of hand" way. Number. They literally detonated inward, sending shards of reinforced space glass flying across the room. Elliot hit the floor as a table crashed over him, beer and alien saliva raining down on his back. The bar's jukebox, a vintage machine that somehow still played pre-warp Earth music, let out a pathetic, crackling noise before skipping to an Elvis Presley cover, sung by a robotic parrot. A monstrous Zypharian royal envoy stepped through the smoldering wreckage. It stood 10 feet tall, covered in shimmering black exoskeletal armor that looked like it had been forged in the depths of a collapsing star. Glowing red sigils lined its arms, pulsating with power. Its head was a mass of glistening tentacles, moving independently like sentient vines. And then there were the eyes, 6 of them, burning like molten embers, scanning the bar with the cold efficiency of a predator. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh, we're so dead." A voice boomed through the bar's speakers, except the speakers were off. The voice was coming from inside their heads. "Elliot Graves, by decree of His Galactic Majesty, King Vortan the Unyielding, you have been chosen for royal union." The silence was deafening. Even the jukebox had given up. Elliot, still lying behind the bar, peered up. "Sorry, what now?" The envoy didn't blink. It had no eyelids, which somehow made it worse. "You have been selected. Your presence is required aboard the Zypharian royal flagship. Resistance is futile." Elliot blinked. Then he blinked again. Then he snorted. "Pfft. Okay. Yeah, sure. Very funny. Who put you up to this?" He stood up, brushing off glass and spilled liquor. "Let me guess. It was Bob the cyborg? That guy's got a weird sense of humor." The envoy raised a clawed hand. Elliot suddenly found himself levitating. "Oh, okay. Nope. This is not a joke." Before he could finish that thought, a metallic sphere detached from the envoy's armor expanded into a hovering stasis pod and sucked him inside. Someone in the bar gasped. Someone else grabbed their drink and muttered, "Not my problem." And then, just as quickly as it arrived, the Zypharian envoy turned, dragging Elliot's floating form behind it, and vanished into the night sky. Aboard the Zypharian flagship, the Eternal Dominion, Elliot's first thought upon regaining consciousness was, "I've been kidnapped." His second thought was, "Man, this is the most comfortable bed I've ever been in." Because, against all expectations, He wasn't chained to a wall or stuffed in an airlock. No, he was lying on what could only be described as a levitating space mattress, wrapped in blankets that felt softer than the concept of happiness itself. He sat up, groggily taking in his surroundings. The walls were black obsidian, etched with luminescent golden symbols that shifted and morphed like they were alive. A vast curved window revealed the endless sprawl of space, distant nebulae glowing in shades of violet and blue. And standing in the middle of the room, arms crossed, was Princess Zira of the Zephyrian Empire. She was tall, not just tall, intimidatingly, otherworldly tall, easily over 8 feet, with metallic sapphire blue skin that shimmered under the dim lighting. Her forearms were adorned with regal golden gauntlets, and her sharp, feline-like eyes studied him with a mixture of curiosity, disdain, and mild homicidal intent. Elliot swallowed. Morning? Her eyes narrowed. You are the human my father has chosen? Elliot scratched the back of his head. I mean, technically, yes. But if we're being honest, I didn't exactly. You are weak. Okay, rude. You smell like fermented earth fruit. Hey, lady, I was working when I got kidnapped. You are not fit to be my husband. Yeah, no argument there. A long, tense silence stretched between them. Then Zira let out a low, exhausted sigh, rubbing her temples with one of her 4 hands. This is absurd, she muttered. I am heir to the greatest empire in the galaxy. My father commands a fleet capable of reducing planets to dust. And I am forced to marry a bartender? Elliot frowned. Hey, listen. I'll have you know I'm a fantastic bartender. Ever had a meteor punch? It's my specialty. You will be dead within a week, she said flatly. Elliot blinked. Wow, romantic. She stepped closer, looming over him. I will not marry you, human. I would rather launch myself into the nearest black hole. Elliot exhaled. Hey, I don't want to be here either. So let's just figure this out before either of us gets vaporized, okay? Just then, the doors slammed open, and King Vortan, a 10-eyed, armored, terrifying warlord of a king, stepped inside, and with a booming voice that rattled the room, he declared, "The wedding shall proceed." Elliot had been in bad situations before, owing money to a cyber loan shark, getting banned from a casino planet after technically cheating at zero-gravity poker, and once getting stuck in an airlock for 3 hours because he misread a bathroom sign. But this took the cake. Standing in the grand hall of the Zephyrian Palace, he was dressed in what could only be described as the world's most uncomfortable wedding outfit. A flowing silver robe that glowed faintly, hovered an inch above his skin, and had so many embedded gemstones that he felt like a sentient disco ball. Hundreds of Zephyrian nobles, warlords, and scholars sat in the grand chamber, watching him with expressions ranging from pity to outright fury. At the center of it all, sitting atop a floating throne of pure obsidian, was King Vortan the Unyielding, a titanic, armored, 10-eyed warlord whose mere presence made the air feel heavier. He was flanked by his personal guards, whose battle armor was forged from the bones of extinct space leviathans. And beside Elliot, wearing a dress that looked like it had been spun from liquid starlight, was Princess Zira, his supposed bride-to-be, who, for the record, looked absolutely ready to murder someone. As the ceremonial priest, a 4-mouthed, glowing alien covered in religious tattoos, began chanting the ancient vows, Elliot leaned toward Zira and muttered out of the side of his mouth, "So, any chance we can do, like, a quick annulment after this?" Zira's golden eyes didn't move from the priest, but her upper left arm gripped his wrist with bone-crushing force. Speak another word, and I will personally launch you into the sun." Elliot winced. "Okay, noted," the priest continued, raising his 4 hands to the heavens. "And so, by the decree of King Vortan, the great empire shall witness the union of—" Boom! The entire palace shook violently, as if struck by a planetary-class missile. The windows shattered, and an alarm blared through the chamber, a deep, mechanical wail that meant one thing: the empire was under attack. All at once, the crowd erupted into chaos. Warriors drew weapons, nobles screamed. One particularly old Zephyrian fainted into a bowl of ceremonial plasma pudding. King Vortan rose from his throne, his 10 eyes blazing with fury. "Who dares attack my palace on this holy day?" Before anyone could answer, a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the outer defense forces battling an invading fleet. Ships the size of cities were exchanging fire with the Royal Armada, and alien soldiers in sleek black battle armor were pouring onto the palace grounds. The enemy crest flickered on the screen: the Corinthian Dominion. Elliot squinted at the screen, then turned to Zira. "So, are they, like, ex-boyfriends of yours or something?" Zira punched him in the arm so hard his vision blurred. The king pointed one massive, clawed finger at his generals. "Defend the palace! Show them the wrath of Zephyrian blood!" The generals roared in agreement, immediately barking out battle orders. Guards swarmed the exits, escorting terrified nobles out of the chamber. Zira, still gripping Elliot's arm like a vice, turned to her father. "I will fight alongside our warriors!" King Vortan's many eyes narrowed. "You are the future of this empire. You must stay safe." Zira's expression twisted in outrage. "I will not hide like some helpless royal." "You will," Vortan growled, his voice shaking the walls. "And so will your husband." Elliot choked. I'm sorry, husband. Can we, revisit that part of the—" A massive explosion cut him off as a section of the ceiling collapsed, revealing black armored Corinthian soldiers rappelling down on anti-gravity tethers. One of them landed directly in front of Elliot, raising a glowing plasma blade. The soldier's voice crackled through their helmet. "Eliminate the human!" Elliot blinked. "Oh, great! I'm a target now. Fantastic!" Before the soldier could strike, Zira moved in a blur, catching the enemy's blade with her bare hand. Sparks flew as she crushed the weapon like it was made of cheap plastic, then used her other 3 arms to slam the attacker straight into the ground, leaving a crater where the floor used to be. Elliot stared. "So, remind me to never make you mad." Zira shot him a glare. "I am always mad." The room descended into pure chaos as more soldiers dropped from the ceiling. Blades clashed. Laser fire scorched the air. The palace guards fought valiantly, but the Corinthians were fast, brutal, and extremely well prepared. Elliot, meanwhile, did what he did best in a crisis: improvise and run away. Spotting a discarded plasma pistol, he scooped it up, pressed random buttons, and promptly activated the self-destruct sequence. "Oh, come on," he groaned, chucking the gun away just as it exploded behind him. Zira sliced through 3 enemies, grabbed Elliot by the collar, and hauled him toward a side passage. "You are going to get yourself killed!" "Wow, thanks. I hadn't noticed," Elliot shouted, as a stray laser bolt barely missed his ear. The 2 of them ducked into a hidden corridor, slamming the reinforced door shut behind them. The battle still raged outside, but for now, they had a moment to breathe. Elliot exhaled, running a hand through his sweat-drenched hair. "Okay, south. On a scale of mild inconvenience to apocalyptic disaster, where do you think this wedding is ranking?" Zira let out an exhausted, murderous sigh. If we survive this day, I swear by the stars, I will personally strangle my father for putting me in this situation. Elliot chuckled dryly. Well, I was gonna say we should bond over our mutual hatred for this whole thing, but I think that would just encourage you to kill me faster. Zira turned toward him, arms crossed, studying him for a long moment. Finally, she sighed. You are less pathetic than I expected, human. Elliot grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. And then, before they could catch their breath, the corridor exploded as a massive Corinthian war mech smashed through the wall, its cannons charging up for a shot that would incinerate them both. Elliot paled. Oh, come on! Can I get a break? The Corinthian war mech stood in the shattered corridor, its quad-barreled plasma cannons glowing with lethal energy. It was easily 12 feet tall, a hulking beast of titanium alloy and malicious artificial intelligence, built for maximum destruction and minimum mercy. Elliot's brain went into panic mode. Okay, he gasped, gripping a chunk of broken wall like it was a shield. Not to be dramatic, but we're about to die horribly. Zira didn't hesitate. With inhuman speed, she grabbed Elliot and hurled him behind a fallen support beam. Stay down, human, she barked, rolling her shoulders. I'll handle this. The mech's red visor flickered as it locked onto her. Princess Zira, you are a high-value target. Surrender or be eradicated. Zira's forearms flexed, her golden gauntlets crackling with raw energy. She tilted her head. You dare threaten me in my own palace? Affirmative. Zira's lips curled into a grin. Then you clearly don't know what I'm capable of. And then she charged. Elliot barely had time to process what happened next. Zira leaped forward, dodging a hail of plasma fire with inhuman precision, spinning mid-air and slamming both fists into the mech's head. The impact shook the entire hallway. Sparks flew as the mech staggered backward, its servos screeching in protest. It retaliated, swinging a massive mechanical fist. But Zira was already gone, sliding underneath its legs before delivering a devastating uppercut to its underbelly. Elliot, still hiding behind the rubble, gawked. Okay, I take back everything I said about this wedding being the worst thing to happen to me. This question mark. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. The mech, damaged but not defeated, deployed twin energy blades from its forearms. Its voice crackled. You will comply. You cannot win. Zira smirked. Then you really don't understand Xipherian warriors. With a final, blindingly fast move, she grabbed the mech's arm, tore the energy blade from its socket, and drove it straight through the machine's core. The mech shuddered, its circuits overloading, before finally collapsing in a heap of flaming wreckage. Silence filled the corridor. Elliot peeked out from his hiding spot. Is it dead? Zira flicked her wrist, shaking off some stray sparks. It was never alive. Right. Yeah, good point. Elliot coughed and climbed over the rubble. I just want to say, that was insanely badass. Zira rolled her eyes. You humans always narrate the obvious. Hey, I'm just trying to process the fact that my wife-to-be is a freaking warrior goddess, Elliot said, throwing up his hands. Zira froze, her expression darkened. We are not married yet, she muttered, striding past him. Elliot sighed. Right, thanks for the reminder. Now, where do we go from here? Zira paused, scanning the wreckage. We need to get to my father. If the Corinthians have launched a full-scale invasion, then this isn't just an act of war. Her golden eyes narrowed. This is an assassination attempt. Elliot's stomach twisted. You think they're after the king? No, Zira said. I think they're after you. Elliot stared. Huh. Yeah, that's funny. Now, what's the actual… Wait, you're serious? She turned, glaring at him. My father's decision to marry me to a human was not taken lightly. It was strategic. And if the Corinthians are here, it means they know something that we don't. Elliot swallowed hard. Like, what? That I make a mean whiskey sour? Zira didn't laugh. Instead, she gestured for him to follow. Come, we need answers. The forbidden archives of Zifarian. They moved through the war-torn palace, avoiding enemy patrols and slipping through hidden passages. Finally, they reached a vast underground vault, its entrance sealed behind layers of holographic security locks. Zira placed her hand on the scanner. The doors rumbled open, revealing a dimly lit chamber lined with massive, glowing data tablets. Elliot blinked. Wow. Okay. This is officially the fanciest library I've ever been in. Zira strode past him, her fingers tracing ancient symbols on the nearest tablet. The Forbidden Archives hold secrets dating back millennia. If my father chose you, there must be a reason buried here. She activated a holographic projection, and suddenly, an ancient prophecy flickered to life before them. A deep, mechanical voice began to narrate. In the age of war and ruin, a curse was born among the Zifarian bloodline. A shadow that cannot be seen, a hunger that cannot be fed. The devourer waits beneath the skin, buried in royal veins, and only the touch of the one untouched by fate can stall the darkness. Elliot frowned. Okay, first off, great delivery. Very ominous. But second, what the hell does that mean? Zyra's face had gone pale. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, "The Devourer." Elliot glanced at her. You know what that is? Zira hesitated. Then she looked him in the eyes. It is a parasite, a curse that has haunted the Zifarian royal line for centuries. Elliot gulped. Okay, that's horrifying. So what does this have to do with me? Zira's voice was grim. The curse is only passed down through our blood. It is dormant until it is awakened. And when it awakens, it consumes the host, turning them into a being of pure destruction. No force in the galaxy can stop it. Elliot felt a chill crawl down his spine. So you're saying that if we don't get married, you're going to turn into an apocalyptic horror show? Zira didn't answer. She didn't need to. Elliot took a deep breath. All right, South, just to summarize. Your dad chose me because my DNA can stop you from becoming an intergalactic nightmare. And if I refuse, the galaxy gets a new overlord from hell. Zira nodded. Elliot groaned, rubbing his temples. I knew this wedding was going to be a nightmare, but I thought it'd be because of, like, a bad caterer or something. Zira crossed her arms. You think this is bad for you? I'm the one who has to marry a bartender. Elliot scowled. Hey, I'll have you know I am a very competent bartender. Zira snorted. Then let's hope you can mix a cure for the devourer, human. Before Elliot could respond, the alarms blared again, this time with a different tone. A deep, guttural howl echoed through the chamber. Zira's eyes widened. No, it can't be. The voice of King Vortan crackled through the comm system. The devourer has awakened. A horrific howl echoed through the palace, shaking the walls like a dying star collapsing in on itself. The alarms wailed in frantic, overlapping patterns, warning of something far worse than an invasion. Elliot gulped. So, I'm just going to take a wild guess here and say that's not the wedding band warming up? Zira didn't laugh. Her golden skin had paled, her four hands clenched into fists. The devourer. It's already taking hold. Elliot glanced around the vaulted chamber of the Forbidden Archives, searching for a possible exit. Or, ideally, a button labeled Undo Apocalypse. No luck. Okay, cool. Love that for us, he muttered, trying to ignore the fact that a literal space horror was apparently loose in the palace. Remind me, this thing, what are the odds of us surviving it? Zira finally snapped out of her stunned silence, her sharp golden eyes locking onto his. That depends. On what? How fast you can run. Elliot blanched. Oh, well, that's reassuring. Before he could start drafting a last will and testament, the entire wall behind them exploded. Through the storm of smoke and debris, a shadow moved. No, not just a shadow. Something impossibly large, writhing, and unnatural. Elliot could barely comprehend what he was looking at. It was part organic, part void, like a mass of tangled limbs, twisting flesh, and black smoke that refused to settle on a single shape. Its form flickered, like reality itself couldn't decide whether it existed or not. Then, from somewhere within its nightmare mass, a voice rippled through the air. Heir of Zephyrian, the time has come. Elliot's entire body locked up as the voice slithered into his brain like a whisper in a bad dream. He had never felt anything like it before, like 1,000 voices speaking at once, dragging across his skull. Zira stiffened beside him, her breath ragged. No! The entity lurched forward, its form shifting like liquid shadow. Clawed tendrils shot out toward Zira, and Elliot did the first thing that came to mind. He grabbed the nearest ceremonial artifact and hurled it. The ornate golden chalice of Zephyrian, a holy relic of unimaginable cultural significance, bonked the devourer directly in its mass of writhing flesh. The impact did absolutely nothing except piss it off. The creature turned toward Elliot, its shifting, pulsing body quivering in apparent rage. Zira looked at him like he'd just committed high treason. "Did you just—" "I panicked," Elliot hissed. "You try thinking straight when a Lovecraftian flesh monster is coming at you." The devourer let out a low, echoing growl, tendrils whipping toward Elliot like spears. Zira moved instantly. With a blur of motion, she grabbed Elliot and vaulted both of them over the wreckage of the wall, landing on the other side of the collapsing corridor. The impact knocked the air out of Elliot's lungs. He groaned. "Okay. Note to self. Running? Good strategy." Zira pulled him up, her jaw tight. "We need to get to my father. Now." Elliot nodded. "Yeah, see? I was going to suggest the get as far away from the nightmare blob as possible plan. But sure, let's do that instead." They took off down the corridor, sprinting past flickering emergency lights as the palace trembled under the chaos of the battle still raging outside. As they ran, Elliot gasped. "So, just curious, how does this thing actually get stopped?" Zira didn't slow down. "It doesn't." Fantastic. They turned a corner and nearly collided with a squad of Zephyrian royal guards, their golden armor dented from battle. The lead guard, a burly, six-eyed warrior with 2 plasma swords, snapped to attention. "Princess, we must get you to the escape pods." "No!" Zira snapped. "Take me to my father. Now." The guard hesitated. "The king is engaged in battle." Zira's eyes blazed. "This is not a request." The guard took one look at her expression and wisely decided against arguing. The throne room of Zephyrian. The royal chamber was a war zone. Shattered columns, bodies of fallen warriors, and flickering energy shields cast eerie shadows across the once pristine hall. The massive throne of King Vortan, a floating construct of obsidian and pulsing energy, still hovered in the center. And there, in the middle of the carnage, stood King Vortan himself. The Zephyrian warlord was covered in battle scars, his massive ten-eyed form looming over a pile of defeated Corinthian soldiers. Two of his arms wielded crackling war axes, while the others held the struggling body of an enemy commander by the throat. Elliot skidded to a stop behind Zira, panting. Whew, wow. So, is this a bad time? King Vortan turned, his 10 burning eyes locking onto them. My daughter. His deep, guttural voice rumbled through the chamber. You should not be here. Zira strode forward. Father, the devourer is loose. Vortan's expression hardened. Then we are out of time. He released the enemy commander, who immediately collapsed, unconscious. Then he turned to Elliot. You, the king growled, stepping forward. You must complete the bond. Elliot blinked. I'm sorry, what now? The wedding bond, Vortan snapped. Only by completing the ritual can your presence halt the devourer's corruption. Elliot stared at him. Okay, so, quick question. How exactly does this work? Like, is this a magical DNA thing? A biological DNA thing? Are we talking a handshake? Or am I about to be forcibly smooched by a very angry space princess? Zira groaned. By the stars! Why are you like this? Before anyone could explain further, the entire throne room shook violently. The devourer had arrived. It crashed through the far wall, its monstrous form warping as it slithered inside. King Vortan gripped his axes. There is no time. His eyes blazed as he looked between Zira and Elliot. Finish the bond, or we all die. Elliot paled. Well, he muttered, this is going to be the weirdest first date of my life. Chapter 5. The Final Battle and the Bartender's Last Stand. Elliot Graves had experienced some pretty weird nights in his life. Once, he'd accidentally locked himself in a cryo-freezer after one too many drinks, waking up 2 weeks later with mild hypothermia and an overdue rent notice. Another time, he'd lost a bet to a Martian smuggler and had to spend an entire week wearing a chicken costume as payment. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could compare to standing in the middle of an alien throne room, being told that the only way to stop an intergalactic horror was to complete a forced wedding ritual with a giant angry space princess. And worse, the devourer was now here. The nightmare creature, a swirling mass of black smoke, writhing limbs, and ever-shifting horrors, loomed at the entrance to the grand Zephyrian throne room. Its voice rippled across reality itself, making the air vibrate like a poorly tuned guitar. The bloodline is mine, Elliot swallowed. Okay, so I don't mean to be that guy, but I really feel like we should have discussed how this whole marriage ritual to stop a cosmic parasite thing actually works before the monster got here. King Vortan, battle-worn but unshaken, turned to him. It must be done now. Zira's golden eyes burned with defiance. Fine. Let's get this over with. Elliot blinked. Wait, seriously? You're okay with this? Zira snarled. I am not okay with this, but I would rather marry a pathetic bartender than let my entire species be consumed by an interdimensional horror. Elliot sighed, rubbing his temples. Great. Love the enthusiasm. Really feeling the romance here. Meanwhile, the devourer was very much still advancing, its smoky tendrils slamming into the walls, shattering ancient Zephyrian pillars like twigs. Vortan barked, "Begin the bond!" Zira grabbed Elliot's wrist and pulled him toward the royal sigil engraved into the floor. "Place your hand here," she ordered. Elliot obeyed, pressing his palm onto the ancient golden crest. The moment he did, the entire room glowed, and a surge of energy shot through him like a lightning bolt, dipped in espresso. His veins lit up, glowing with unfamiliar symbols, his entire body vibrating with alien power. Whoa! Whoa! What is happening? Zira, standing opposite him, also began to glow, her forearms trembling, her eyes blazing with starfire. And then it happened. A golden thread of energy connected them, stretching between their hands, their bodies, their very DNA. The devourer screamed, "No! It cannot be undone!" The creature lunged forward, all tendrils and teeth and impossible horrors, but the golden energy exploded outward, a shockwave of pure Zephyrian light blasting through the room. The moment it touched the devourer, its writhing form convulsed. Its smoke-like body flickered, turning unstable, as if reality itself was rejecting it. Elliot, still glowing like a sentient firework, gritted his teeth. Okay, so, are we winning? Or did we just make it more angry? Zira's voice was steady. We're ending it. She stepped forward, raising one of her hands. The golden light surged, wrapping around the devourer like binding chains. The beast howled, struggling, shrinking, as the royal energy sank into its form, tearing it apart at the molecular level. And then, it was gone. The room fell silent. The only sounds were the flickering embers of battle, and the faint hum of energy still radiating from Elliot and Zira's joined hands. Elliot let out a shaky breath. Okay, that was, horrifying. But also, I think we just got married? Zira groaned. Unfortunately. The aftermath, the battle outside had ended. With the devourer defeated, the Corinthian forces, realizing that their secret weapon had just been obliterated by an alien wedding ritual, panicked and retreated, leaving the Zephyrian forces victorious. Elliot, still dazed, was sitting in the remains of the throne room, poking at his newly glowing hand tattoos. So these don't come off, huh? King Vortan approached, towering over him. They mark you as part of the Zephyrian royal bloodline now. Elliot blinked. Wait, does that mean I'm, technically a space prince now? Zira scowled. Do not let that go to your head. Oh, too late, Elliot said, grinning. I'm already thinking about getting a royal bartender sash made. Vortan huffed, clearly unamused. The bond has been completed. The devourer is no more. He crossed his arms, his many eyes boring into Elliot's soul. And you, human, are now a part of my family. Elliot choked on his own breath. Wait! Does that mean you're my father-in-law? Zira buried her face in her hands. By the stars, please stop talking. 1 week later, things settled down surprisingly fast. The palace was rebuilt. The Zephyrian people reluctantly accepted their new, weird human prince, and the Corinthians were now too busy licking their wounds to cause trouble. Elliot, now dressed in a very fancy and very itchy royal robe, stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing cityscape of Zephyrian Prime. Zira stood beside him, arms crossed. You seem weirdly calm, she noted. Elliot sighed. Well, I survived an alien invasion, a forced marriage, and an apocalypse monster. Kinda hard to be stressed about taxes after that. Zira smirked slightly. Perhaps you're not as useless as I thought. Elliot gasped, clutching his chest. Was that almost a compliment? Don't push your luck. Elliot laughed. So, what now? Do we, actually have to act married? Zira shrugged. Our bond is political. Neither of us asked for it. So, for now, let's just... She exhaled. Take things one day at a time. Elliot smiled. I can live with that. A beat of silence passed. Then, do I get a cool space sword now? Or what? Zira groaned. You are insufferable. Elliot grinned. And yet, you're stuck with me. And for the first time since this insane nightmare began, Zira actually laughed.